Analysis and discussion of the topical issues of the week. Brought to you by Housing Finance Bank, a financial institution regulated by Bank of Uganda. Housing Finance Bank, we make it easy.
Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
Good evening. It's the 19th of April, 2024, and this is Spectrum Extra coming to you live on Radio 1 FM 90. Being a Friday, we normally review the major events of the week, but today we will be focusing on the traders' strike over taxes and the business environment. Now, this week, the strike called by traders in Kampala escalated and spread out to some other cities and towns as the government, through the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, requested for 2 weeks to be able to respond to their issues. This position by the government was rejected by the traders after the assembly sat and discussed it thoroughly. The leaders, as we speak now, are supposed to be meeting President Yoweri Museveni at State House. The president has also promised to organize a bigger meeting where all traders will be called at Kololo Independence Grounds at a date yet to be informed. That is a message that has come from the Presidential Press Unit. Now, at the heart of this strike is the implementation of the electronic VAT compliance system known as IFRIS. The traders also want the VAT threshold increased from 150 to 1 billion shillings. They want taxes on imported garments reduced. They also want foreigners, manufacturers, and investors stopped from engaging in wholesale, retail, and hawking trade. Now, the situation has opened up the debate about taxation in Uganda and what should be done to expand the tax base. It has also acted as a springboard for members of the public to assert themselves, demanding for value of the taxes actually they pay. The overall feeling is that some sections are being overtaxed, and they say it's time to rethink the whole taxation process so that those involved in making profits are taxed, including segments of the economy that enjoy exemptions and tax holidays at the moment. Parliament, which considers and passes the bills that result into these taxes, raised a number of important issues, and they did not actually take a final position because there are committees of Parliament which are looking into this matter deeply. Now, the MPs, according to the Speaker, are likely to discuss the tax bills for the financial year 2024-2025 on Wednesday and Thursday. Now, some pundits say that the MPs must not miss this opportunity to attend to the concerns that are being raised by the traders. But today we'll be asking, so what is the best way forward for Uganda given these issues that are being raised? You can share with us your views so that we can have an organic and balanced discussion here in studio based on your experiences, but also your aspirations. You can use our number, the WhatsApp number, which is 0703 090 090. My name is Kenneth Lukwaganderson, and my panel today, the Honorable Godfrey Kabbyanga, the State Minister in charge of National Guidance, Government of the Republic of Uganda. Good evening, Honorable Minister, and thank you very much for being with us this evening.
Good evening, listeners. I'm happy to be back here.
In studio, making his maiden appearance on this particular platform, Dr. John Walugambe is Economist, Executive Director at the Federation of the Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises of Uganda. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us on Spectrum Extra.
Thank you, Kenneth. It's a pleasure to be here.
Dr. Sarah Bireete, Chief Executive Officer at the Center for Constitutional Governance, pundit on human rights and governance issues. Good evening, and thank you very much for making time to be with us, Sarah.
Good evening, listeners, and thank you for inviting me back to Spectrum Extra.
Mr. Joseph Ochieno, member of the Uganda People's Congress, Pan-Africanist, and a pundit on global governance and development matters. Thank you very much once again, Joseph, for making time to be with us this evening.
Always a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for having me. I am delighted to be here discussing this, one of the most important aspects of businesses this year, and I hope out of this some common sense will prevail at State House. But I'm delighted to say that the young John seated next to me is my young man from Mwiri, and the same whole Nabikamba, and so College Mwiri, as you know, we built this country, and so we take this very seriously.
There you go again with your history.
And we donated the national, the motto. And so. Yeah.
All right. Maybe let's begin with some guidance from the Honorable Minister Godfrey Kabbyanga. He could be with an ear at State House. Honorable Minister, we expected the President to meet the traders today at State House Entebbe. We saw a press release which was issued. Has this meeting really taken off, Honorable Minister?
Kenneth, let me just tell you that I can't talk about State House issues now. I have to wait for a press release from State House. That is, if the meeting was there.
If the meeting was there?
Yes.
Does this mean you are not
the traders can go to State House and probably the president becomes busy and tell them to come the next day. So we'll have to wait till the meeting is over. And my ministry was not represented. At least it should have been Trade, Ministry of Finance, who are the main ministries in these issues of taxes.
You are also main ministry as far as the public is concerned, because you communicate the messages from government.
Yes, every ministry, department and agency of government has a government communicator. So we don't need to attend each and every meeting because the communicators of government are always there. State House has a press unit. As soon as it is through, it sends us it relays the message to us. And then for us, our work is dissemination.
All right.
So we don't necessarily attend each and every meeting.
Dr. John Walugambe, I know you also have friends in that group that went to State House. Has the meeting taken off?
I cannot confirm. I cannot confirm that the meeting has taken place. I was supposed to go, but I got busy. But as and when I'm able to reach them, I'll be able to share any news. But at the moment, I have not received any.
All right. And in this context, since you're closely related with the traders, let's begin with you. The government responded to the outcry of the traders and actually said they needed 2 weeks to actually look into these issues and report back to you. After thorough discussion, some of these issues require policy shift, they might require amending the law, like the tax bills that are going to be considered in Parliament next week. But your colleagues, the traders, are saying no. Why is this the case?
I think 2 weeks is a long time, and because, this is an existential issue, there have been discussions with different government departments, and they've been consulting anyway. So I don't see why the need for such a long period of time when discussions have already been taking place. Now, what I would have expected was for government to say there are certain short-term things that they would have made concessions on, and there are those other things they would have referred for longer-term discussions. For instance, if you look at the issue of foreigners and investors, that's an issue that should have been handled by the Ministry of Trade. They just passed the Competition Act. So they would have said, let's go back and try to see how we can work through that act by developing regulations to address that. And then if you look at the issue of IFRIS, the issue of IFRIS, there's the soft issue of the approach, how they are rolling out IFRIS. So as a federation, we think IFRIS is actually a good solution. What is wrong about it is the way it's being rolled out, the high-handedness, the very militaristic enforcement methods that are being used by URA against the traders. And in fact, some illegalities, because URA, for instance, is asking customers for receipts. If you don't have any free receipt, they threaten you. This is illegal. There's no law that gives them that right. You see? So URA is engaging in very unorthodox methods to... And then if you look, for instance, at the penalty, the law gives, once URA issues you with a penalty, you have 28 days to pay. But that is not the case with the free system. And then they are issuing also very, ridiculous penalties. Because you don't have any free receipt, then they issue the penalty of 6 million Ugandan shillings. So these are the things that traders are... It's more the operations. And I think for me, the traders, my colleagues who went to meet the president, I thought really they are just engaging the president for nothing. Because most of the issues that the traders are concerned about are operational in nature. What URA is doing in many cases is not even allowed by the law. So we don't really need any policy shift per se. We just want URA to do what they do better. Because at the moment, IFRIS is just to explain, it's the electronic fiscal receipt and invoicing solution. It's meant to target VAT registered taxpayers who are have a turnover that exceeds 150 million shillings. Now, the challenge is that URA is even targeting people and forcefully registering people who don't at the moment fit within this bracket. And this is the concern that so on one hand they are pushing IFRIS, on the other hand they are trying to do VAT enforcement, forced registration, historical audits. So they are doing a lot of things at the same time, and I think, and some of them, as I mentioned, are not even covered by the law. And this is the relief that traders need in the short term. Now there are other longer term complaints that traders have had. Some I agree with, some I don't. For instance, the removal of import duty on clothing. This import duty was placed there as a result of the East African Common External Tariff that was revised in 2023 by all the members of the East African Community. And they decided that because they want to grow the local textiles and apparel sector, they need to have an import duty at 35%. Now, this is not something that the president can directly influence. Of course, he can lobby, but there's no commitment he can make. So however much you meet him, there's nothing much he's going to do here because it's an EAC level decision. So as traders, if we think we can work, for instance, with the East African Business Council, that would be for me a more sober kind of approach to addressing this issue. Now, as I said, on the issue of foreigners engaging in petty trade, transportation, and so on, I think for me, there's also not been very much of goodwill. We've been pushing this agenda and government came up with a Competition Act. But the Competition Act is very weak. They talked of setting up some kind of committee in the Ministry of Trade whose composition is completely unclear. What we need is a strong competition commission that can ensure fair play. If we have a market-based economy, we had better have a competition commission or authority that does its work well. And people are saying we're rationalizing government agencies. We don't need... No, a competition commission can have 5 staff. And this is what people must have in their minds. You can have few people doing work very efficiently and not being a burden to the taxpayer. But what we want is order as people trade and run businesses. So for me, I believe that these 2 weeks that government asked for really does not come from a place of wanting to solve the problem. It's simply wanting to buy time. It's hoping that within 2 weeks, traders will have been exhausted and will have ended up opening their shops, and these issues will be overtaken by events. But, as I said, I would recommend that the short-term issue, especially around the operational issues around IFRIS, those government can make immediate concessions. They don't need the president. They don't need 2 weeks. The longer-term things, they also need to be, because I also see a certain element of not being upfront. Government goes and negotiates these things, and then when traders have a strike, government officials are not able to take responsibility and say, this is what we negotiated, we are pushing an import substitution agenda, we are pushing an export promotion agenda, therefore we cannot do ABCD because of this reason. And they are hoping that the president will do that on their behalf, which is unfair. So, for me, I think that the meeting, yes, will take place, but I don't expect very concrete things, apart from the short-term immediate relief that we think that the minister can offer, the Commissioner General can offer, because it's purely operational.
All right. Let's hear from you, Joseph. Your take on this agreement that you had there, Dr. Walugambe, giving us some insight on the issues that the traders are actually insisting on. What's your reading of this situation?
I would have liked to have heard from the minister comprehensively first, but that said, he's a great friend of mine. We still have to visit the border town of his in the extreme west as he visits the extreme east, and we shall pass via Mwiri. As a matter of interest, the tourism in the east needs to be boosted. Extremely important, because this is enhancing our domestic industry. I just want to say that listening to my young Miriam here, you can actually see what the problem is. This is basically death of government, absence of government. These are basic politics. This is a governance issue, and there's nothing else but governance issues, shambolic. We are still recovering from 40 years of banned political parties, 20 years banned, another 20 political parties and organizations struggling, and 40 years of impunity by NRM. It is extremely arrogant that post-COVID, with the struggles and suffering that you saw people particularly in downtown Kampala, going through, that you arrogantly know that the economy is struggling. You, of course, partly your impunity and arrogance makes you lose critical support from Western traditional funders, meaning World Bank and others, including much more recent shambolic legislation on anti-homosexuality bill. You go broke. You boast, you tell people that we shall manage. But while you're telling your citizens that we shall manage to do this on our own, what you don't tell them is that you will actually basically come and slap them while grabbing from them. Basically, that's what's going on. To the extent that you can implement this, basically is the clearest example. Which school did these guys go to? Certainly, I hope none of them went to Mwiri, and that's an important disclaimer. Which average secondary school do you go to study basic commerce? And then you implement this without actually going through the process of a testing process. You go to Chikubo, perhaps even downtown Nakasero Market, and you want to impose this. A very expensive equipment. You go to Malaba and you go to Busia, and indeed you go to the other end of Congo border or to Katuna. Most of the traders there are basic, average, semi-illiterates, people who are, even basic WhatsApp conversation is wasting time for them, and you want them to implement this heavy equipment thing. Granted, as John was saying, taxation, and particularly for those of us, in fact, for me as UPC, from the democratic left, we believe in taxation, but we believe in fair taxes. You just need to make sure that you do it nicely, organized, and fairly. The people to be taxed, this conversation post-COVID, should be the cattle keepers, those guys who hold thousands and thousands and thousands of herds of cattle, not people who are struggling in Chikubu. Those are the people we should be talking about today, the people who are not affected by COVID, not the ordinary people in Chikubu. And number two, these other people who are big tax evaders, people who import and export goods. Those are the big, powerful guys, whose monies we don't know is going. These people whom URA cannot go to, people whom they get instructions, do not send your receipts to them, don't go there. Or when they actually their equipments turn up, and tax people go there, a mere phone call means they retreat. Those are the people, not the average, ordinary Ugandan citizens. That said, a UPC government in these kind of situations, if it was actually to go through this process, one, you make it as a matter of policy conversation, and that's why I started with policy. I thought you might have thought that maybe I was trying to bore you. You start as a matter of conversation. This is something that would have gone through a national conversation, something that would be embedded in a manifesto. By the time it's embedded in a manifesto, you say, we shall focus on this, and we shall target this part of community, and we shall be going for either fair or hard taxation at this particular rate. You have a national conversation, you get it tested through the system. In the event that you're elected as a government, you go then through the formal processes. Even then, even with the impunity of NRA, it tells you that actually they didn't test it. The fact that actually they're asking for 2 weeks to look through, tells you that actually they have no clue what they're going to go back onto. So I think death of politics, a matter of impunity, and then final thing though, where I don't agree with John, Mr. Museveni, the buck stops with him. He's the guy who inaugurates taps. He's the one who inaugurates small markets. He is the man in charge. This is the nature of the economy that we got. Everything ends with Mr. Museveni. I know.
Why don't you say that he officially is the Minister of Finance without going to that lowest level?
That is why you're so fantastic.
By law, he's the Minister of Finance. And therefore,
John,
you are
by law, is the Minister
under him.
And in any case, and thank you very much for that, but I was being very generous to him. Because I also know that in the event that he said no, nothing would happen. In any case, anyway, he was the enforcer of this arrangement earlier. And in any case, these guys are getting instructions from him. So it's very much unfortunate. One thing that I want to say very quickly, though, because just merely an introduction, is that I am delighted that Ugandan citizens are waking up, that the traders in Chikuba are waking up, that people are prepared. This is what we've always been telling them. People are prepared to lose a day's, earnings, for the betterment of their future and for the betterment of the children's future. So I think NRA has been taken offshoot because they've been taking our people for granted. They didn't know that Ugandans can actually say that today I will close shop, and tomorrow I'll close shop, in the best interest of long term. Why? Because always the blackmail that if they close shop, perhaps they'll be losing money is something that has come out to be realized that, look, they either take action, they don't. But then finally, during COVID, and that's why I started with COVID. During COVID, I used severally my column then in the Sunday Monitor repeatedly to push that government needed to be sensitive, particularly to the lowest of the low, as far as businesses and trade is concerned. They're continuously dismissive. Uganda is possibly the only country in East Africa that never came with any specific package, one other an incentive or two as a cushion. And as I said, the timing cannot be worse. And particularly if the timing is this, where you're pushing people in Chikubanda. Only the other week, we came to know that you rolled out monies as incentives to people, including things that, members of parliament have 500 million shillings, billions of shillings. That is extremely insensitive. That insensitivity is there because I told us impunity. Why? Because public opinion in this country doesn't matter. Public opinion needs to begin to matter. If we're having challenges, we should be looking through both fiscal and taxation policies, generally, yes, to cushion our economies and to cushion our people. But then where is cushioning of the poorest of the poor? And final point on this, people are saying taxes, but where do these taxes go? Taxes that don't go to school, taxes that don't go to education, taxes that don't go to infrastructure, taxes that go to the pockets of a few individuals.
Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. Let's go for a break now. When we return, we will hear from Dr. Sarah Bireete and also hear from the Honourable Minister whether there are any concessions that the government is making. There's a statement which was issued by the Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development to the press, but it was also read out in Parliament. Is that where the government has decided to end this? Or are we likely to see any interventions from State House? Stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90 and keep your comments coming via the WhatsApp line 0703 090 090.
Spectrum Extra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum Extra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90.
Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Extra, live on Radio 1 FM 90. Our focus today is on the traders' strike, which has entered the second week running. We are told the traders, a delegation, set off this morning to State House in Entebbe, where they're supposed to meet President Yoweri Museveni. That's after disagreeing with the proposals that had been put forward by the Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, that they should reopen their businesses and wait for a solution within the next 2 weeks. That's something they failed to agree and said for them they are heading to State House to have issues discussed. In that communication from the Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, there was a directive that URS should establish an office within the Chikubo where they can facilitate the traders and also sensitize them about IFRIS. But there was also a directive to KCCA and other local governments actually to stop issuing licenses for hawking to foreigners who are busy moving around the country, selling similar merchandise to what our local traders are actually dealing in. My guest this evening, Mr. Joseph Ochieno, member of the Uganda People's Congress, Dr. John Kakungulu, he's the economist and executive director at the Federation of Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises. We have the Honourable Godfrey Kabbyanga Baluku, the State Minister in charge of National Guidance, Government of the Republic of Uganda, and coming on the microphone, Dr. Sarah Bireete, Chief Executive Officer at the Center for Constitutional Governance. Sarah.
Yeah, we have a situation where traders are raising so many issues in terms of the tax administration in this country. The EFRIS could have been an occasion to protest, but I think they have more structural issues beyond the EFRIS. One of the things is, for example, VAT, which is charged at all points of sale of the same product. So you can have, a single product paying VAT 3 times. If a trader goes to, and I want to take an example of locally manufactured goods, because the government is promoting BUBU, Build Uganda, Buy Uganda, Build Uganda. If you buy sugar from Maduvani, you pay VAT. I'm using sugar as an example.
No, actually, Madivani pays VAT first. Not so.
No,
as a manufacturer?
No, VAT is by a consumer.
Okay.
So if you
everyone pays at each level.
at each point of sale, there is a charge of VAT.
So when Madivani is selling,
he
pays
sells,
VAT.
adds VAT to the person who has come to buy.
Madvan pays VAT on inputs. Madvan, because whatever Madvan is using, he or she uses raw materials.
So he
pays some
VAT
VAT on raw materials.
Okay.
Then he also charges.
the
So what
first
happens?
custom.
He deducts what he paid.
Okay.
The balance he remits to you.
All right, sir.
Yes, so the first buyer from Madvan pays VAT. Madvan has also paid VAT on raw materials. So the wholesaler pays VAT at that point of sale.
Correct.
If retailers come to the wholesale shop,
Yes.
they pay VAT.
Correct.
And the customer who will go to the retailer will
Buy
pay
1
VAT.
kilogram.
To buy the same one product, they will pay VAT. So these are 4 times of VAT on a product. And in some cases, the smaller shops buy from one retailer to another.
Yes.
Yeah, and at times they call it what? Kuyiriba.
Kuyiriba, yes.
Yeah, if you don't have a product, you buy, run to your neighbor, pick a product, and these are some of the things that URA is putting, those deterrent penalties. You have given so if I pick a product from Joseph to give, just to keep my customer client
happy, yeah.
So who should issue a receipt? And they are all selling at the same price. Should the 2 shops issue a receipt? And if they don't find a receipt from you and the customer says, I'm from Joseph's shop, then you are slapped with a penalty of 6 million because a receipt is missing. So these are some of the issues that are really annoying. And then the mishandling. I've talked to several people who have been met in Chikuba with goods.
So with those 4 points of paying VAT, Dr. Sarah,
yes.
Do you think that should be looked into? And we
Of
have
course.
one
How can you charge the 4 taxes on one product? How?
Okay, so no.
Let's allow I'll come to you.
That is the standard.
Let's allow her
The
to
way
conclude.
that is set up, it's kind of, I don't speak for URA, but that is standard. The only issue I've been seeing calculations circulate online, and the calculation was wrong. They were charging 18% on the whole amount. You are supposed to charge 13% on the profit that
There
you
you go.
charge.
There you go.
13%.
We'll come to
18% on your profit at whatever stage.
Dr. Walugambe,
Profit
let's
or
gather,
price?
let's gather the
Profit.
views around the
So
table.
what does URI charge?
Supposed to be profit. But of
What
course, some
do they
people,
charge?
some people pay more. You know, the challenge here is that even when you're not, if you're not sensitized and you pay more to URA, they are not going to advise you otherwise.
And
But
rarely,
it's supposed
rarely
to
with
be,
the refund, yes.
but it's supposed to be on profit at whatever stage.
All right, let's continue.
So you can see the confusion also. Because tax is supposed to be straightforward and easily understood by everybody.
Yeah.
So if there is confusion on the major tax of VAT, so I think for me VAT should be standardized. At what extent? Maybe the first
At what
retailer,
point?
at what point should we stop charging VAT? There is also a proposal that if a manufacturer, now like Madvani, serves tea with sugar to his staff,
Apparently,
the
yes.
staff should pay VAT. That's part of the new proposals.
Yes, correct. No, the employer should pay for them,
Yes,
which is
it's
ridiculous.
ridiculous. So you cannot look at the craziness of just one tax. Then if you go to the whole chain of administration now, the roughness of the enforcers, from KCCA, we've been battling with KCCA, URI has been shooting people in some areas, in Arua, URI has shot people. Why? Because with the shop and trade, if somebody has defaulted, you don't need to fight. Close the business.
No, go through a legal process.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
But the first thing is put a padlock on the shop and say, come for a discussion. Why do you need to shoot anyone?
No,
That is
sorry,
excessive
sir.
use of
For me, I would
force.
actually suggest you give them notice. Not necessarily close.
Okay,
Because even that closing is a rough thing. In established nations that I know, incling some African countries, you just don't go to somebody's shop and just
Okay,
close.
so having said that,
But
so
at least on this issue of
look.
IFRIS, nobody has been shot. The incident of shooting was in
No,
West Nile
I'm
sometime
just
back.
talking
No,
about
but
enforcement.
they're moving with guns.
Yeah, they're
All right.
moving with guns. And they stop customers.
And
so
check the
one of
box.
Yes, check your box and in
And
a
ask
rough
for
manner.
receipts.
And if by mistake you drop a receipt, some of us don't carry receipts. The cost of living is too high. I used to carry receipts to take stock of my expenses. But the cost of living is too high and depressing. By the time I reach home, I don't want to look at the receipt. I don't want to be reminded of how much I've spent for very little basic goods for my home. So I normally drop receipts in the dustbin. So if I went to Kubo, then I would be subject of that harassment. Because for me, from the time of COVID, when the cost of living started hiking, real receipts are depressing, and I've stopped taking stock of my expenses because it is too frustrating. You find that your hard-earned salary, you've spent money that I can't even talk about because I know people will be like, she has all that money to spend. Yet at the end of the day, you have 1-2 caveras and it's not even enough for the people that depend on you. So it is depressing, and I am sure there are many people who also drop receipts in the baskets as they leave shops. So what sensitization was there for even customers to say that we might check you on the way, please carry your receipt? What if I went to Kubo now, me who is in the habit of dropping receipts, is manhandled by those brutal security officers? How can we enforce tax like that?
Well, so, I've seen adverts by URA on TV, and I've also heard on radio, where they were telling people to ask for their receipts. As they buy,
but there's no law that allows.
As they buy anything from a shop, they should ask for the
I get my receipts, but I drop them. I'm not saying I don't get my receipts. No, I get to them because what I pay must be documented. But I don't carry them home. I drop them as I exit. But I want you to charge me with evidence that this is the money for the goods I've taken and I've paid the actual amount.
All right. Let's hear from Honorable Minister.
I wanted to add one element that we are as a country, we need to have a method that focuses on production, a productive economy, because the tax system is as good as the productivity of the economy.
Right, Sarah, we will come deep on that side of the way forward, the best way forward for this country to deal with this issue, because it has come out clearly that probably one of the reasons why URA is pushing, they have to meet a target. The resources are actually needed by government.
It is a fact.
To be able to provide services. Let's hear from the Honourable Minister. Yes, Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Kenneth.
The government that
first of all,
never feeds.
IFRIS, which everybody has his own
definition.
Others are calling it if miss, others are calling get what. IFRIS, I think as Dr. Walugambe has said, it's a good system. It's not a tax.
No, it
is a system used, first of all, to assess VAT and administration of VAT and collection. So it's not really a tax. Because even today I listen to Radio 1. I'm an ardent listener to Radio 1, Luganda. And
they're not bad.
The Luganda News was saying, Omsorogwa IFRIS. Now that's where the problem is. Others are thinking it is a new tax. But it is not a new tax. And just as Dr. Walugambe said, it's the best system of compliance, assessment, and it can also help the business people in bookkeeping because it's some sort of an accounting system. So it can also help. But just as everybody is saying, I think the problem has been sensitization. People are not well sensitized. And this is a tax which started some time back. Because implementation of IFRIS started in 2018.
There you go. You also called it a tax.
The implementation of IFRIS system, the implementation of IFRIS system started in 2018. And there are so many business people who have been hooked on that system.
The manufacturers, and some wholesalers.
Exactly.
Plus some...
exactly. But
supermarkets.
Exactly. It went a bit slow during COVID, and now it is resurrecting. And so far, according to the statistics we got yesterday, is that over 50,000 people are now on the system. The VAT registered people, those ones, compulsorily they are on the system.
Yes.
But there are also some people who have voluntarily registered. But now I'm getting it from Dr. Walugambe that some have been forced. And if they have been forced, that is wrong.
Yeah, because the URA
Once
has
you
the
hit
mandate.
the threshold,
Yes.
of
Yeah,
150.
No, if they suspect, you may not even hit it.
And
They just suspect you might hit and they
and if there is
compulsory
any person who has been forced and yet he doesn't hit the threshold, that one is not.
That's
not
it's
good.
wrong.
Yes, you should voluntarily, and the voluntary means
Should
voluntary.
the law gives you a
Sorry, Minister, if you don't
mandate.
mind.
But if you are
If they suspect, so if, for instance, they may assume that every quarter, so this quarter I may say that I declare that I made 60 million. Then they suspect if he makes 60 million this quarter, 60 million the next quarter, he'll have hit the threshold in a year. So they just,
How do they think like that?
I'm saying that.
but the law gives them the mandate. This is the point. That's the law. So they can,
To assume?
yes, they can compulsorily register you, and then
But
And I think that's why the problem is.
You can,
John, I thought you said no.
Let's allow the
contradiction.
minister. Let's allow him.
Sorry,
No, the VAT
yeah.
Act. The VAT Act gives you the right
Mandate to estimate.
not to estimate, but to compulsorily register you because they think or they suspect that you are fit. That
You
threshold.
said there's also a discussion on that particular aspect. At what point should somebody actually be asked to pay VAT? Is it at the time an invoice is issued, or is it at a time when a receipt acknowledging payment has actually been issued? Some people have been actually complaining about the government system where government is supplied and it may take a year or two without
Even
paying. But URA is expecting you to actually pay immediately an invoice is raised.
now those are procedural issues. But let me first say.
Sorry, John. I'm
Let
really
me
sorry.
first make my point.
I usually don't do this. No.
Let's allow him. Let's allow him. You'll have a round. To go. Let's allow him.
Let me
Let's not
first
disrupt
make
his-
my case. The report we got is that voluntary registration has now hit around 20%. But just as Dr. Walugambe has said, yes, URA has the mandate to estimate and compulsorily put you in the system. But when something is voluntary registration, it should be voluntary, as the word says. That's what it should be. It should be voluntary, as the word says. And me, that's what I love. But I'm telling you, I have also noted that there is lack of sensitization. I will give you my own experience.
Okay.
I stopped at Braga petrol station, Total. I took fuel and paid using a card. Then I decided to go and buy something in the shop. And after I had collected and I had only bought 3 loaves of bread. And the girl asked me for my TIN number. I don't know whether there is anybody who knows his TIN number here.
How can you go?
you can't even cram that number because it's long. And I said, TIN number for what? He said, no.
I like that.
You're getting me?
I'm getting you.
And then I said, I don't have a TIN number. Then she said, give me your ID, your national ID. I said, for what? He said, I want to pick your names, your correct names from the ID. I gave my ID. I became a patient customer because I wanted to go through the experience. Otherwise, I would have said, I put back the bread on the shelves, but I wanted to experience what is going on. And the girl took 5 minutes. Because
of a minister.
I don't think even she was very perfect in computer. So that's where my problem is.
Does every system require TIN numbers of customers?
Obviously, it must be. It must have.
Now, because if you don't have a TIN number, then that business should be configured to the free system with URA. Because these big supermarkets are already configured to the system. So they may not ask you your TIN number. Because everything they sell, it just goes direct.
Definitely. They synchronize
with URA. So that's why they don't ask for TIN numbers and the like. But now I'm looking at that small shop. I think it is not yet configured. And she needed all those details. So you could see that there is a problem of, first of all, sensitization, people don't know whether it is a tax or it is a system. Two, there is obviously, it's digital. Now we are going digital. And now digital literacy is still so low.
Yeah.
And another problem which I can foresee is you must have an electronic device.
Yes.
And
Yes.
this
Earlier,
device, the cheapest is at 1.1 million.
That's correct.
Correct. Yeah.
So that means for you to go on the e-free system, you must incur a what? A cost.
And buy data.
Exactly. And
buy
then
data,
obviously
which is also
Internet
expensive.
connectivity. You know, all those are now challenges. And that's why you meet that traders are striking. It's not that they hate the system, but the system is coming with so many
Additional
inconveniences,
compliance costs.
additional compliance costs, and that's why there is that strike.
All right,
And my-
Honourable
my-
Minister, is it possible for the government to actually meet the cost of
Supply the
those
machines.
gadgets? Today, the Uganda Manufacturers Association
AFDs.
added a voice to the traders and said it's wrong for the government to ask the traders to actually buy
Incur
this
costs.
equipment.
Supply.
Is it possible
I
that you
think
can say-
now we are getting feedback. You know, when the system begins, when the system now was scaled up, because the other manufacturers, for them they already computerized. They
That's
don't
true.
see any problem. They even have digitally literate staff. They don't have any problem. But now when it was scaled up now to go into those other traders, it became now a problem. Now we are getting feedback. I think what we can do now, what we shall do as government is to come back to the drawing board and listen to all that feedback and see now, look for strong mitigation measures. But that system is the best because in terms of compliance, you will not get many problems with URA. In terms of collecting tax, it is easy for URA to collect what? To collect tax. And in terms of bookkeeping, even you, the trader, they will not cheat you because every cell will be on the system. And therefore, your staff can't cheat you. So it is advantageous on both sides. But there are some inconveniences which have been created, which we need to look at and look for a solution.
All right.
But otherwise, the system is
Joseph,
good. Just as
you're
we
right.
talked
I was
about.
really burning to say this, really actually to help you guys as a government and for nothing. I really don't want to get anything in return. All I'm saying was that, and you concluded very well, that's why we must go to the border.
You're about to say that he's UPC trained.
He's excellent. No, check his blood. Check his assessment blood. But I don't have to go there. No, on a serious note, that's what I was going to say. That because of a very important conversation at a very charged moment, we come here on a Friday evening. We just want to make sure that the minister goes back with something. The point made earlier about the point you yourself were making about, first of all, about the experience you had in the supermarket tells you this process hasn't been properly checked, rolled out, tested, and surveyed, researched,
And
consultations
especially,
made.
if I may add,
Yes.
supermarkets employ more elite staff compared to ordinary shops.
Precisely. Now, my experience, my first and only experience, was actually in a place in which I was served. And I remember when the staff came to me, I actually told them, and you're right, that where it works and where the systems are, and if it's at a particular corner of Kampala, it helps them, including doing management accounting for their accounting systems and managers. So it's absolutely fine. But, are you thinking Kampala? Are you thinking State House? Are you thinking Nyabushozi? Or are you thinking Chikubo? So, number one. And then number two, the point which John was making. If we are not particularly very sure about legislation that has been put, is it voluntary or is it not voluntary? Since we are discussing this matter, and I'm saying this officially from a UPC perspective, that I would expect you guys to have a clear view that if it's a matter of legislation, next week there is a conversation around Parliament. Parliamentarians need to be able to have a conversation about this thing. You cannot say that it's voluntary, and then you're asking a very crude agents of government going to torture people, saying, demanding for these things. There needs to be clarity. So yes, there is a total commitment. I told you at the introduction, UPC is a matter of principle. We believe in taxes, but we believe in fair taxes. But at the end of the day, this is not about taxation. It's about basically a regime that is now almost behaving North Korean style, in trying to seek money to fill in a gap that may be understood, but in many cases possibly not sufficiently understood. So I think on the basis of this conversation alone and from the minister, it tells you that this recording should go to Mr. Museveni and his finance team. I think some of them needs to be sacked, some of them need to take some pay cut, but the matter needs to be reviewed, so that's again revisited. Revisiting means, therefore, there's a national conversation where there's a political input from various political parties and organizations, civil society organizations, tax experts, possibly even some people in academia, and you guys in the
Do we
media.
need to go to that level to address that?
That is what normally happens, and because it did not happen, we go to the shambles.
Okay.
Mr. Walugambe.
I just wanted to clarify.
There's somebody who has also sent in a message here which is going directly to you. Somebody actually says that, my brother, I'm listening to the show, but Mr. Walugambe is wrong. VAT of 18% is actually charged on the gross sale price, not on profit. Just that point of returning to URA, the business is allowed to pay the difference between the input VAT and the output VAT. Input VAT is the VAT incurred on their business expenses, including stock, rent, electricity. Output VAT is what the business charges their customers on the product sold. That's somebody there actually sending in a message to you, responding to what you had said earlier.
Okay, that's okay. I've received that clarification. Now, I just wanted to say that for IFRIS, there are various ways in which a person can use it. One is the EFDs, the electronic fiscal devices. The beauty with them is that it can work offline. So if there's no data and so on, you can work with it offline and then it synchronizes. Then you can use the portal, then you can use system to system, what the supermarkets are using.
We are told you can even use your mobile phone.
Then there's also smartphone option. There's smartphone option, there's the USSD code and so on. Now the issue is, for instance, for the portal, you are required to be online. It's the burden now is on you to be connected to the IFRIS system and so on. So it means you can even be penalized if, for instance, you don't use IFRIS and you say we are offline, there's no electricity and so on. Yes.
And you are penalized.
Yes. That's the so those are some of the issues. The costs around data, the costs around, because what they want is someone to say, no, I don't use IFRIS because electricity is off and stuff. So they now push the responsibility back to you. Now, the other issue I wanted to raise with this IFRIS is this issue of unlawful customer targeting. I think this is something that we really need to emphasize.
It's out of order.
You cannot approach a customer. The customer is not the one who is VAT registered. Yeah. It is the business. So you have no business asking for a receipt, and there's no law that requires me to keep a receipt or to show it to anyone. What I spend and where I spend it is my...
I would not have that pressure.
Then there is also the issue...
I think there are other requirements, or like you said, URA is sometimes empowered to do certain checks.
No, but in this case, they have no legal basis.
What if you're smuggling?
No, they have no. You can't smuggle in Kampala. There's no legal basis for what they're doing. Just know,
If they find it with gold, yes.
Kenneth, IFRIS, you're targeting businesses that are VAT registered. They have no business with the customer. The other issue is this whole issue. The VAT Act requires taxpayers to either choose to do what they call cash-based accounting. So it means you only pay once you've received the payment. What the IFRIS system has done is only to allow this for people who supply to government. Okay? So it means that so long as you supply to government, you can pay VAT as and when you've been paid. But if you do not... Yes, if you're working the government entity. So they have only, they bent the rules to only, because it's people who supply to government who made a bit of noise. So the system only allows cash-based accounting for this category of people. And I think this is another problem. It means in that case, it's diverging with what the law requires them to do. So
I can be supplying several other people, including government.
Business is buying credit.
Then just to clarify on the issue of mandatory...
is taking notes.
On the issue of mandatory registration, I've just read now that they say that there are two requirements. If you make 37.5 million in 3 consecutive months, they mandatorily register you for VAT. You don't need to go and fill in the forms and so on. It will just register you and that's it.
All right. Spectrum X on Radio 1 FM 90. Let's go for a break now. When we return, we're going to try to look at the solutions. With all this push and pull here, the big point is the government is looking for taxes to finance the next budget. Our next budget is going to be 58.3 trillion shillings. That's
0.9. I think it was 8.9.
Which means URA has a target to raise at least a considerable amount of this money, and they are under pressure to actually deliver. But looking in future, can't we actually innovate? Are there any other places from where we can get taxes? There are other countries that are actually going into production to cover the huge gap. Stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum Extra continues after this break.
Spectrum Extra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90. On Radio 1 FM 90.
Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Extra, live on Radio 1 FM 90. Review of the major events of the week. We are looking at the traders' strike over taxes and the business environment, and we're asking a question. Given this situation, what are our options as a country? We already have comments that are coming in from the listeners. I'll read out some of these comments, and please do prepare to respond to any that comes in. The first comment comes in, says, VAT should be on receipts, not invoice. Then somebody else is saying, how can MPs decide tax issues when their allowances are not taxed? Expand the tax base by concentrating on consumption taxes. This way, people will pay according to their incomes. That's somebody there with those comments. We have another comment coming in from another listener here, Rogers, who is listening in from PG, says, good evening, Spectrum Extra. Salute to the great team in studio. I entirely agree with Mr. Walugambe on the IFRIS issues being purely operational, especially when it comes to short-term solutions. Government giving 2 weeks is to solve an operational issue that can be handled by a commissioner and a ministry in charge. Government lack of operational control on an issue that traders raised a weekend before closed the shops is simply a lack of short-term operational mitigation. That's Rogers in Impiji. Sharif writes in and says, for God's sake, the traders who went to meet the president deserve some respect. I hear they went in the morning. The minister must know that these are people who raise salary, including that of the military that is harassing them. Actually, government is carelessly losing money through such deployments. That's Sharif there. Drani writes in and said, the president has been pointing at the cattle corridor as his success story in the fight against poverty. Imagine for nearly 40 years, the people his chest thumped of getting out of poverty are the very people who have not been paying taxes from the millions they collect from sale of cattle and other cattle products. What kind of discrimination is this? And what type of leadership is he providing? That's a comment from Drani there. Then another one comes in from Anthony, who is in Chiwuli, says, good evening, Spectrum Extra. The problem of Uganda today is because we are small in population. Some big African countries like Nigeria do not feel the impact of their VAT, and their VAT is low due to their population. We have to be careful not to sink our economy. Then we have a comment from Grace Iniseta. Whatever the economists say, VAT is unfair approach of putting a tax on a tax. If I buy an item at shillings 100, VAT inclusive, I add a profit of shillings 10. My new value is 110. I add VAT on the whole, hence shillings 129.8. By doing this, I will have put 18% on the original VAT. Well, those are some of the comments that are coming in. Let's try to respond to them, but also as we discuss the options we have. What can we do? Because it seems the problem we have at hand is to raise more revenues to meet the demands. There's so many demands. People want quality education. People want good health care, good roads. And, of course, like Dr. Sarah said, there's also the other side of the cost of public administration where even the government workers are taking a lot from the coffers. Let me begin with you, Joseph.
What do we do?
What do we do? But also respond to some of the comments that are coming in.
We change government, and because that will not happen overnight, it will happen in a few weeks. Before that happens,
who changes government?
This government needs to be prudent and to stop public wastage. We need to end corruption. We need to question who Bireete is, and we need to know where the money of the Bireete and Loboa hospitals went. Those monies alone would just sort out URA. So, no corruption. Number two, the size of government. A future UPC government would half this parliament. We don't need a very big parliament as it is like this. So, reduce that size. Number three, make sure that we reduce reduce and revisit the pay of legislators. So, not only do we have legislators and ministers who are being paid a huge amount of money, including big allowances that are more than a whole year's head teacher's salary. But checking those and reducing them and reviewing them would take us somewhere. I'm just talking about this very, very practically. Beyond that, I think we should basically invest in productivity. We should invest in agriculture, the sector that is naturally ours. 71%, 70 to 80% of the Ugandan population, dependent on agriculture, and yet agriculture actively, injects just about 24% for our national GDP. That is something that should be looked at. For a regime like this, that a nation necessarily claims that they're revolutionary, and yet they're perfect extensions of capitalism, we need to review the neoliberal agenda urgently, that brought and sustained Mr. Museveni. So one of the things we need to do is not only do we invest in the sectors that matter to ourselves, we should be able to make sure that we review how much we invest in education, in health. And people, when we say that, people think it's a burden. No, the more healthy a population are, the more productive they will be. The more educated and skilled the population are, the more productivity, the more productive they will be. In fact, part of the other things that we talk about is infrastructure. Normally, when we talk about infrastructure, Mr. Museveni talks about the potholes in the industrial area. That is one of them, yes. And then the trains that is sold, I think, I don't know to which cattle ranch. But if we invest in ensuring that we have electricity across the country, maybe IFRIS will not have a problem in Agongera. When we make sure that there is a sufficient wide reach for telecommunications, because up to today, these days in Agongera, both MTN and Airtel, I cannot freely have a conversation in Agongera. In fact, I cannot have a meeting in Agongera's my beautiful living room right now in Zoom because of...
As well of information, Dr. Walugambe has just said that if electricity goes off, or if you have no internet,
you can still use the gadget.
And you can say you are defaulting and you pay penalties. So how are people who are in areas where electricity is off and on, how are they going to manage to be compliant with EFDs?
So I think that's where the EFDs come in, and that's why government has to buy these EFDs and give them.
Let them distribute them free.
There is no way they've only bought.
In fact, only last week, my home in Kampala for 2 days there was no power. 2 days there was no power.
Here in Kampala.
So here in Kampala. And it's a rather reasonable side of town.
So the
emerging part of
Northern.
Right. Yeah. So really we could go on and on, Ken, but we're simply saying that, look, this is a matter that urgently needs to be reviewed, because you asked me what to do. It needs to be reviewed. Right. I think the guys who are talking to Mr. Museveni tonight, Mr. Museveni need to be able to tell them that you guys go back home. We need to go to square zero. After all, our minister here agrees that the whole thing is shambolic. We need to take a breather. We need to have a review.
Not shambolic.
And it's shambolic. Then we're able to, together as a country, get a system which has got consensus. Get a system which has got public support. When there's public support and there is confidence, Ken, you get the results.
Right. Dr. Sarah, amid this debate, we have seen Ugandans who are asking questions. Where is the tax they pay actually going? But also, there is that debate about unfairness. Some people thinking that others do not pay taxes. For instance, we have this comment that came in from one of the listeners who has insisted that emoluments of MPs should be taxed. They have no right to discuss and decide the kind of taxes that Ugandans should pay, yet they are not actually paying taxes. Do you think there are certain things we can do to actually expand the tax, but the sources where we can collect tax without necessarily looking at this specific small area of the central business district?
Former employees and
businesses.
The fulcrum of our money economy. So, yes, government needs to expand the tax base. I was just thinking, if us, because I'm an employer, I have 9 staff at CCG. So if I structured their salaries in a way that a small portion of their money is salary and I craft the others as allowances, how much pay would they pay? And I think we should call out to the MPs to get a lump sum pay. We know everybody earns a minimum of 40 million.
Yes.
Let's have charge tax on 40 million.
Yes.
Not just hiding their money in allowances, fuel allowance, accommodation, airtime. Let's charge 40 million per MP and levy a tax on that money. They are the biggest beneficiaries of our taxes because that's where they earn their money from.
Correct.
If not, then I call upon all employers to structure their salaries of their people, their staff, the same way parliaments structure there, so that everybody evades tax. Because the MPs are evading tax. The political class in this country does not pay tax. That's why even talking about the cow tax is problematic. There has been proposals from financial experts for over 10 years
to tax agriculture
about expanding the tax base and taxing agricultural products. But because a cow, and why is there resistance because of cows? Cows fetch the biggest amount of money at a single sale.
You mean this thing raised such serious like that?
Yes, because the minimum cost of a cow is 2.5 million. The prices range from 2.5 to 10 million a cow, depending on the price and the size of the cow and the breed.
And the breed.
So if we are concentrating on charging a sale of a flask or a cup in Chikubo, 1,000 shillings, and we are struggling with arms to make sure there is tax on a cup of 1,000 shillings, why aren't we paying attention to cows that fetch 5 million at the point of sale? Why don't we then also charge whatever tax, VAT or whatever, or whatever tax we say 10% at the point of sale of animal products, cows, goats, pigs, and as well as the produce? Let's say that at every point of sale, there will be a tax charged. That's the only way every citizen will pay their fair share of the tax. But let's not concentrate on business people and the employees.
Small business people,
by increasing pay all the time, increasing, I don't know what threshold it will be. And I want to compare really. Allow me compare with Singapore. Singapore's model is known as the economic miracle. Singapore was at the same level with Uganda at the time UPC launched the Common Man's Charter. And actually, Singapore picked the Common Man's Charter and implemented it. And now they are a first world country. Whereas here we fight with our petty politics and throw away good ideas. So Singapore has 5 principles of development. One is strong government intervention, regulation and production, facilitating production with good roads, and other needed infrastructure like electricity and internet. There's a time government launched the internet in Kampala hotspot. Well, how come Chikubo people are struggling with the cost of internet? Mr. Minister, you are in charge of the digital systems in the country. Where is this Kampala internet? And how can it be accessed? You can access it here in the studio and tell people outside there that indeed it's working. So this Kampala hotspot, if it was not a hoax, then the traders would not be complaining of cost of internet to administer IFRIS. The second principle is open, export-oriented economy, but also education and skills development for productivity of the citizenry. Diversification, which we've tried here, but prudent economic policies. Fiscal policies, fiscal discipline, stable macroeconomic environment, transparency for business confidence. So if you look at these elements, they are missing here. How? Because these are the things that would make our tax base productive, would expand the tax base, other than increasing taxes on the same smaller population all the time.
All right, let's hear from Dr. Walugambe. What are your thoughts there on the issue of diversifying the sources where we can get more taxes instead of looking at only what we are looking at now?
Okay, first of all, we need to reduce the cost of doing business. We need to encourage more people to start businesses because this is the only way. If you only have 10 people in an economy that are working, then it means you're going to burden them with too much tax. So you must, first of all, reduce the cost. You must make it easier for people to start and to grow their businesses. It's very difficult to start and grow a business in this country. And that's why you have that most of our businesses stuck at the micro level. Micro, small, and medium. We don't have that graduation of businesses, and that's not very good for the economy. In fact, what you have now from URA's own statistics is a shrinkage. People are paying more money in the past, paying less. So that is troubling. In fact, the Ministry of Finance has also found that the informal sector is growing. So it means that people who are previously formal are choosing to go back into informality because the cost of compliance, the cost of operating a formal business in this country is too high. We need to moderate that. Then we need to cut useless expenditure. Today I saw that government brought a supplementary budget of around 1.1 trillion, and 700 billion is going to be given to some gentleman called Magola to set up a pharmacy. You know, this guy came in the middle of COVID and he promised us a vaccine and nothing came.
Now, this is breaking news.
So for me, we are happy to pay taxes, but what we don't want is to have these conmen take advantage of public finances. If they want to innovate, they want to work like any other business, that's fair. But what we don't want are basically conmen taking advantage of the president's industrialization agenda and convincing him with very sweet words, you know. So for me,
let me say this on record. I do not know that gentleman Magola as a conman. So
no, I'm not. Okay, I'm sorry, but I'm just trying to use him as an example. I'm not saying
if he was around the other year
Kenneth,
over COVID,
Kenneth, I'm not saying
Kenneth, man.
I am not saying that
you're
he's
saying
a conman. I'm just saying
system.
generally, you know, if you have a business, okay, Kenneth, this is the point.
There's also the other
when
issue.
you are business people, I'm a business person. I'm a business person myself. If you have a good business idea, you go to the bank or you go to financial. They finance you. Government cannot start subsidizing businesses. It's not fair. Alternatively, government should set up a business ideas.
UDB.
Government should set up a business ideas grant scheme where anyone with a great idea goes and competes.
I have many business ideas.
There's UDB.
No, UDB is a bank, but this guy is getting a grant. This guy is not even getting a loan. He's getting a grant.
Okay.
So what we are saying, if government has excess money to support businesses, they should set up a special vehicle where all of us go and compete.
That's correct.
If you defeat me fair and square, that's okay. If Magola comes out at the top, we are happy to give him the money. But what we don't want is for him to be allocated money through an opaque process.
Maybe it is a joint venture.
I don't really want to. I don't want to appear to be pushing an agenda against Mr. Magola. I'm simply saying businesses are struggling at the moment.
It has happened with other businesses also.
Are struggling at the moment to pay this money. What we don't want are other businesses going
to take advantage.
Taking advantage.
All right.
Now the other issue, the other issue is around multiple taxation. If you are saying, we must choose, any government must choose to either go through the indirect tax route or the direct tax route. If you do indirect tax, it means you charge consumptive taxes like VAT. So it means everyone pays. Even if you hide and switch off the light, the more you consume, the more you pay. Now, what you don't want is to push both at the same time, direct and indirect. So what I see here is trying to push both taxes are the same, and it's going to create a problem because then you're going to have issues of over-taxation, multiple taxation, and so on. Then, finally, I want to say we must also respect institutions. The reason that traders are striking shows that there's a breakdown in communication. We have business associations. These business associations, government must be willing to listen to them, must allow them to develop position papers so that they engage. But the fact that these associations are being ignored means that now traders have to resort to strikes and so on and saying, want to meet the president. A trader has no business meeting the president. These are issues that ought to be solved at the Ministry of Trade level, Ministry of Finance level. So I think for me, this institutionalization and part of the private sector development strategy talks about government strengthening business association. I think it's something that we need to see being taken forward.
Honorable Minister, let me come to you. Your views on this issue of widening the tax base, areas where we should actually be collecting more taxes. And earlier today I was speaking to a colleague who actually said, you know what, issues of taxes in more developed democracies that we are aspiring to go to are actually serious issues. They can make you fail in an election. You can fail to be a candidate simply because your tax records are not clear. But in countries like Uganda, the politicians do not want to pay their taxes. MPs are not paying taxes. I don't know if ministers also pay taxes on the allowances they get or the money you actually paid as salaries. But the ordinary workers in the private sector, people are paying payee. At the same time, the little money they remain with, they go and buy goods. They are paying indirect taxes. So what else can we do, in your view? Does this discussion feature anywhere in those high tables in State House or in cabinet where you sit, when you look at the challenges Ugandans are going through?
I think in order to widen the tax rates, the tax base, we should improve production. That's the only way out. And we should put in place incentives to ensure we improve production. And that's why the president has identified the four sectors: commercial agriculture, industry, services, and ICT. And I was happy, for instance, the president put his foot down on exporting raw iron ore. Now, the other day, he was commissioning a plant of tin, and that's the way to go. Now, the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Mineral Development and Energy and Mineral Development are finalizing issues of concessions of revamping Klembe mines. That's where we should go, and we should put in place incentives to assure we improve our manufacturing sector. If it can grow, that's why we have these industrial parks, the one in Bale, the one in Kapeka, there's one being developed in Kasese. If all these can improve, then the tax base will also increase. That's why we are pushing a lot of money in PDM to see whether people can go into commercial agriculture. That one, those are
the little money you're sending down at the parish level.
Yes,
can actually push people into commercial agriculture.
It can. It can. Because as soon as people now stop working for only the stomach, they have something to sell. Then we put up facilities to add value on what they have produced. Then we are going to get more money from agriculture and therefore more taxes. As the Minister of ICT, we are trying to see how we can improve the national backbone infrastructure so that internet can reach everywhere in the whole country, and therefore people can go into the ICT sector. Because for it is actually for ICT to grow, you must have cheap, reliable internet, and that's what we are pushing for now. We already have money from World Bank and the Exim Bank to improve on all that infrastructure. So when you come to tourism, tourism is one of the biggest industries now, which me and Ochieno are interested in. We really need to assure the tourism infrastructure is improved. For instance, we need to upgrade the airfields which we have, Kasese, Kisoro, Gulu, Arua, so that tourists and then Tororo.
You need to be known.
And then we build that one of Kidepo. We improve on the road network so that tourists can reach their destination very well. And we also put in place incentives for people to put up hotels in some of these places.
Including domestic tourism?
Yes, domestic tourism. We need also to improve it. And all that, if we can do all those things, then the tax base is going to increase. But if we don't improve production, then we shall remain with a very small tax base, and therefore the few people who are paying tax are going to suffer.
Dr. Sarah.
I have two questions for the Honorable Minister. One is, can we connect to Kampala Internet? Because this internet is from your ministry.
Yes, you can.
If we can, in this studio, we need to tell viewers out there and the listeners that Kampala Internet works.
And we shall
the
support
second
its
question
promotion.
is, why is your government hesitant on animal tax at the point of sale? Why
taxing the agriculture
sector at the point of sale?
What is the problem?
Why are you hesitant?
People are making profits from there.
We are not hesitant as such, but discussions are going on about that.
Let me explain why it's important. Bank of Uganda released the report that only 1% of Ugandans earn 1 million and above. A cow in the market fetches 3, 4, 5 million. Why are you running after taxing 1%, which earn 1 million and above?
And does that
we
mean
ignore
discretion?
one cow in a market at 4 million. Does it make sense?
We are not hesitant as such, but discussions are going on. It's like you would ask me why we are not taxing coffee farmers at their point of.
No, Mr. Minister, is there a timetable for sale?
The discussions about taxing animals is going on, and
what exactly is being discussed?
Whether
And we have just concluded annual census. That has just concluded.
Yeah, whether that tax can also be imposed, and the discussion is on. Yes, the discussion is on.
Whether,
but the whole issue is
when.
No. It is not an issue when. How. No, those are the problems we are getting now. When we just come with the tax without taking, Dr. Walugambe has said consultation is very important.
And research.
So
you cannot
I did say so too, but I don't know what consultation is.
All right,
I don't know what research is.
Minister. Let me just ask you some basic questions. Do we have people in commercial agriculture in this country?
No, majority are subsistence.
Majority of the farmers here are in subsistence.
Do we have those who are in commercial agriculture?
Yes, we have some people who have gone into commercial agriculture.
Are they making profits?
Yes, otherwise they would have collapsed.
Do they use our infrastructure?
They use it.
Why are they not paying taxes?
Those ones, obviously.
They pay taxes. They pay income tax.
They pay taxes. They pay taxes.
They're supposed to pay income tax.
No,
they are supposed to pay.
No, they pay.
They pay.
What they don't pay. But, the issue is, I did a study on the agricultural taxes and so on. I think government has taken, because tax policy can also be used to encourage certain sectors to grow. What I've just mentioned to you, the 35% import duty on clothing. They want the textile industry to grow. So I think government is also trying to use tax policy to allow the agricultural sector to grow. Now, the most common agricultural tax that's used in agriculture is withholding tax.
All right.
Now, when you introduce withholding tax, you're basically going to have the same scenario like you're having with IFRIS, and you're going to see very poor farmers come up in arms. Because what will happen is the commercial farmers tend to source certain inputs from those smallholder farmers, and they will require that they have TIN numbers, they will require that they are IFRIS receipts and stuff like that. So I think it may appear, because I know that the agitation is for the big commercial farmers to pay, but ultimately, if we push forward such a tax, it may end up hurting smallholder farmers.
All right, let's go for
that's my view. That's my view.
Joseph,
so these guys,
the minister,
I think,
not concluded.
Spectrum Extra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90. On Radio 1 FM 90.
Thank you so much for staying with us. Of course, you can hear the discussion
income tax going on. So what do you want them to pay?
The issue of paying
them to pay what tax?
I was the only one who was quiet.
All right, maybe Dr. Sarah. One of the problems we might encounter in collecting taxes from the agriculture sector is at what point should the taxes be paid? Should we go to the farm gate? Should we go to the markets?
No. At the point of sale.
What tax?
If you sell cows from your farm, every cow requires a movement permit to move from one place to another. Before that movement permit is issued, there should be evidence of that tax.
Precisely.
So it's not
Who collects it?
Point of sale. No, if you have sold a cow, go and declare. Come to the LC chairperson with evidence of a tax. Whatever tax Parliament will levy, if they say 5% on profit, let them pay. Whatever amount will be levied. So that before you get a movement permit to move that cow, there is evidence of tax. So it should be at a point of sale, and it should be charged from farmers who have sold their outputs, not ever going to the farm to levy the tax. That's why we are saying point of sale.
So income tax.
All right.
Whatever it is.
And that's what you are saying. Maybe URA is not moving very aggressively to enforce
No,
the
cleverly,
payment of
cleverly.
income tax.
As of now,
But the law requires that everyone pays income tax, including those commercial farmers. If they are not paying, then there's a problem.
You see, these are
We
Of
have more
enforcement,
comments.
not the law.
We have more comments coming in. Good evening, Spectrum Extra Lawrence from Entebbe. You guys are only talking about IFRIS. How about the increase in payee from 40 to 58% for salary earners or more than 10 million?
That's not correct.
How do you cut more than half of somebody's salary when at the same time you are increasing taxes on other commodities that will increase commodity prices? How about you at least leave the salaries the same so that we meet the increased cost of commodities? That's a
That
comment
was
there
fake news.
from a listener. Another comment: every Ugandan should be embracing IFRIS. The Holabalu should be about why they are not teaching about it. It's always going to be a struggle going away from informal way of doing business. Kindly remind Mr. UPC that they are in bed with the NRM. We have another comment. Thanks for the program. Masaba Joseph from Tororo. My concern is why if IFRIS now and COVID-19, and yet COVID-19 hit hard businesses in the country. We have cried to the president to reduce his cabinet and expenditure. He has refused. Corruption is also a problem. We are suffering as common Ugandans with very many taxes. Henry Chiwenda. Good evening, Spectrum Extra. Kenneth, each panelist should define, well...
Fiscal policy.
This is a very competent part. He actually said that the list machine requires a computer to deliver complete accounts. VAT is not on profits. It's on additional price, which is not necessarily profit. That's a comment from Chiwenda there. Then we have Kaoma Digo listening in from Mitiana. Good evening, Spectrum Extra. It's interesting that the minister sees compliance with the law to be something good, but on many occasions their government at times do not want to comply with other laws. Charles Sokoth in Tororo, government can widen tax base by, among many other things, exporting prison services, especially taking prisoners with expertise to work abroad in farms and factories. Just imagine how much we can earn from political prisoners.
Fantastic.
This person is being sarcastic.
Drop the
And we have another comment here from Tony Kent Chaze, who is listening from Mawanda Road. Do we as end users or clients even know that the receipts we are issued matter so much? We are charged VAT every time we pay for products or services. Yeah. Where does it end? It's never filled. About double or multiple taxation, it's been happening in mobile money transaction. URA must help us grow in patriotism. Could it be someone has a consignment of IFRIS machines just waiting for the LOPO from the traders? That's a comment there from Kent. Then we have another comment. If government appreciated the cashless economy, the solution would be easy since payment platforms and money transfer systems have advanced in technology and it's mobile. Our increased desire to use cash predominantly does not allow for success. Even health insurance licensing are frustrated by the system. Then we have another comment here. Another comment, Luanga Habat in Matuga. A need for government to think out or other avenues to increase the tax base. That is something that needs to be done urgently. Well, those are some of the comments that are coming in from the listeners. Honorable Minister, if you can respond very quickly to some of these issues, and then I'll come to Mr. Ochieno.
First of all, I think one of these days you should invite here someone from Uganda Revenue Authority to come and
defend themselves
on issues of VAT. Because when you look at how it operates, it may not even be multiple taxation. Because I'm not going to use input and output.
It's only paid by the final consumer.
Exactly. It is
VAT is paid by the final consumer.
If you go to a factory to buy, they charge you VAT. But
then you also charge the customer. Then you remove what you paid and you remit the rest to URA.
Exactly, the rest to URA. So those are things which people need to
Many people don't claim input tax because they buy from people who
are not VAT registered. That's why they insist that if you want to benefit from VAT, you should also register so that you can claim the VAT which you paid. So that one I would like to be very, very clear about. But I think if you brought a URA person, he will calculate it for you very well, and people will appreciate it. I have listened to most of the comments, and most of the comments really are the same outcry of the traders. But what I want to say is, this is a new system which has come into play, and we are listening to feedback from the people. And URA is one institution which listens to feedback. If there are issues of enforcement, like soldiers harassing people, that is feedback which we are taking as government. And therefore, we must be able to correct it. Because for any tax to succeed, first of all, it must be clearly understood. And any system also must be clearly what? Understood very well. And there must be enough education about that tax and the system how to be collected. And it must also be appreciated. But you should also know that biblically, all taxpayers are not loved people. But and then another thing,
tax collectors.
And another thing which we should also understand, that URA is not supposed to harass the traders because they are the ones who collect the tax. They are actually the tax what? Collectors. So all those are things which we shall look at and see how we can eliminate that harassment, and also do more sensitization, and also do more digital literacy, so that people can appreciate. But I also want to tell our people that where the world is going now, you must struggle to be digital. True. Because in most of the countries, they are abandoning manual systems. They are all going digital. And therefore, as much as possible, we must all struggle to have some digital literature as much as possible. And this system will also help traders at the TMT. But also, you should also know, Kenneth, that there were some people who were invading VAT, and now they have been caught in the web. Yes, because
that's true.
From the time the system was introduced, collection of VAT has increased. Not necessarily that they're harassing people, but there are some big players, big business people who are invading what?
Under declaring.
And some continue to do so.
They were under declaring. And those are also some of the people now who are fighting to ensure the system collapses. And but what I also can't agree with, even if I'm a government minister, this issue of meeting me with my goods and you ask for a receipt. The receipt and whatever. I mean, in most cases, so many people don't ask for receipts. Even in a supermarket.
I'll tell you my experience. I bought some books for a school.
Yes,
and I was taking them to the park so that they could be taken by taxi to the village. And I was stopped by a soldier who told me to open up the box and produce a receipt. And I basically did not take interest into the issue of the receipt. I was simply taking the goods to the taxi to be taken. But there were so many people who had been stopped downtown, and their goods were being loaded on pickups and being taken away, confiscated.
Because VAT is supposed to be collected by
at the point of sale.
At the point of sale, not from customers. The customers pay, but the collectors are the other. Probably what we should do now, because I'm part of URA, we should sensitize the point of sale, these traders, to always remind customers, after you are bought, say, please take your what? Take your receipt. So that someone keeps the receipt. But I'm telling you, the other customer has nothing to do with VAT. He has already paid it. So you cannot collect it from him. You are going to collect it from where he bought the goods. And therefore, that one, Even if I'm a government minister, I don't agree with it.
All right. We have more comments coming in. Good evening. Let me help you widen the tax base. 1, tax corruption. Secondly, tax money earned in romantic relationships like transport money and what is given as a reward for debt. Soldiers have no business collecting taxes. Well, those are comments coming in from one listener there. And then we have another comment. Anderson and guys in studio, stop skirting around the name of President Museveni. How much should he be paying as one of the biggest farmers? This listener thinks we've been talking about.
You are really clever. You are really clever, Mr. Listener.
Dr. Sarah Bireete, is it the farmer? Is it the farmer you're talking about?
I am also a cow.
Actually,
And you've been selling.
Yes, of course. That's how I understand
But
the
you pay
difference.
income tax.
No,
Why?
because it's not charged.
No, it's in the law. You don't need to
it
pay.
is
You
not.
need, at the end of the year, you need to file your return, and you need to
That's
pay it
how
in
I
that
tell you,
context.
you
She has
need to
been
understand.
evading tax.
No,
That's why
but
she looks
you are
good.
Dr. Argembe, you need to understand that currently URA is only focusing on commercial farmers. But
Correct.
even subsistence farmers sometimes sell. So once in a while, I also sell a cow or two, but there is no tax.
All right, we still have more comments coming in. Henry writes in and saying,
That is very responsible, Sarah.
Henry writes in,
No, but technically, you are supposed to actually file every year.
Where is it?
At the end of the year, you're supposed to file a tax return. At the end of the year, every Ugandan is
I am part of the
expected,
informal sector here.
all right, we have a comment.
which is growing.
We have we have a comment coming in from Henry. He says we should also have taxes on religious houses. That's how he puts it. I think he's saying churches. And he says, and African shrines. The shrines are
That one, yeah.
the shrines are gifted a lot of chicken, cows, and goats. We need to widen the tax base and incorporate those
Just
ones.
tax the goods as
above.
they are being sold.
Then we have another program. The programs like Emyoga, Entandikwa, and PDM beneficiaries pay tax payee. To expand the tax base, reduce tax holidays, reduce use of cash. That is Michael listening in from Entebbe. Radio 1, Albert from Entebbe. How does the government collect the proposed tax on land sales? Regarding agriculture, the local governments charge movement fees, market and produce fees. How do we reconcile that with agriculture tax? How will automation be embraced in this era? How can we ensure that automation is embraced in this era? Then we have another comment. Thank you, Kenneth, for the program. Issue of high pay on top of indirect taxes. Workers in Uganda go home with nothing, ideally. A friend of mine and others have been having ideas of immigrating due to taxes and high cost of living. Yeah. I had never thought it was that bad. Government needs to think through the current tax regime. That's Omuchunguzi listening in from Kira municipality. Emmanuel writes in a text, the policymakers make regressive policies. Last 2 months alone, have had one financial institution, EFC, liquidated, and 3 commercial banks downgraded to credit institutions. Many businesses are closed, and URA is giving obscene fines. How can you pay those fines, which are more than the business share capital? Let the ministers get it real. Cut down ministries, MPs, advisors, fix corruption, and the pressure on URA will be reduced and get friendly in tax administration. That's a comment from Emmanuel there. Rogers in PG, an idea of government giving free IFRIS equipment to traders and perhaps make an entry point of business in Uganda easy and seamless, so we can see more SME graduate to the 5th generation category of business. We can as well tax children by levying tax on every child a couple produces in a way to control population explosion. Those are some of the other comments that are actually coming in. Well, gentlemen and lady, we need to sum up this discussion. So we have this situation. We have the president meeting the traders. Joseph, do you have hope that this issue is likely to be solved and the traders will go back to work? Or what advice would you give them now that their issues have been heard? Do you think they should stick to their guns or consider so many other Ugandans? And even we know that each passing day, the country is making losses in terms of the taxes that would be collected from Chikubo and other places in the central business district.
these people should stick to their guns, and more people should be much more sympathetic to them. And I hope everybody else in Uganda who's a taxpayer in Uganda should begin to ask themselves questions and consider being close examples by joining these people, so that we take a stand on this regime that spends what it doesn't have. But I hope that tonight Mr. Museveni apologizes to Ugandans and decides that this process is going to be suspended. Whatever process is going to take place even in the National Assembly next week are suspended indefinitely as we review these matters, having conversations, including the feedback that my good brother, the minister, is going to give. But just quickly, this cashless process cashless idea is extremely important. It makes sense. It makes things and businesses cheaper. It's good for the environment. And in any case, going digital, it is ideally the best way. To do so, the government needs to be able to invest much more money, including making sure that Nagongera has got internet access. We have electricity. I'm lobbying for electricity. One of the things we're going to say in Nagongera, together with our roads, is that no electricity in Mawundo, in Paya, those villages, no votes for NRA or anybody associated with NRA come the next elections. Number two, somebody raised a very important question about these soldiers who are torturing and taunting you, Ken. I feel very sorry for you, the soldier who terrorized you down Chikubu. Mr. Minister, what have soldiers got to do with this business here? Soldiers should not be doing this thing. They should be defending our nation state. This is the job for the police in case there is need for enforcement. It should be the police, not soldiers. I'm tired of raising these things again and again and again. NRA should know their job is to defend. NRA, the soldiers, that's what their job should be.
UPDF, please.
NRA, which is the new name, UPDF. UPDA. UPC, NRA, there is no relationship. There's a relationship between Jimmy and Betty and a few people around them. UPC has got no relationship with the NRA. We are as clean as we were in 1985, and we're going to be cleaner. We are actually the cleanest political party, minus individuals associated with Mr. Museveni. We're the cleanest political party that give hope to the future of this country. Finally, Mr. Minister, this Mbarara thing, I've been hearing, I got some few messages, people are saying that this IFRIS thing, it does not exist or is not operating. But I'm not quite sure about the issues. But I'm told Mbarara is not affected. I need a very specific response because people have told me this severally, and it's not a rumor, seemingly. You need to confirm this. And because if it is
it
in
should
Tororo?
Be national. Is in Tororo?
It is in Tororo, but certainly in Mbarara. Why not Mbarara? Mbarara is the second biggest, allegedly, taxpayer base after Kampala, after Greater Kampala. Why not Mbarara? This is a very important national question at this very sensitive time. Don't forget, Luenya Biru, my middle name is Luenya Biru. That battle for this tax business in 1960 really pushed away the British. So NRA guys wake up. But beyond that, tell Mr. Museveni they should stop wasting taxpayers' money, particularly spending money that they cannot afford.
Dr. Walugambe, as we come to the end of this show, your closing remarks.
My closing remarks are that this is just one issue, but we need to ensure that our tax system is efficient, it's certain, it's simple, and targets people based on their ability to pay. If we raise tax beyond what people are able to pay, then there's no utility. You cannot keep expanding a tax base that's reliant on indirect taxes because pretty much everyone is already in the tax bracket. So this talk of expanding the tax base, we need to interrogate what do we want to expand exactly and who do we want to target. The other point is that we also need to tell our traders that some of the demands that they put in that paper may not be attained through these negotiations. I already talked about the import duty tax on clothes. I already talked about the issue on competition. That's something that we need to resolve with the Ministry of Trade. On the issue of IFRIS, I think URA and the Ministry of Finance need to improve the operations of it. I don't really see what the president has to do with it, really. These two entities should sit with the traders and try to improve their methods, some of which are illegal anyway. Thank you.
Dr. Sarah Bireete.
Well, I think we are at a point where the politics must meet the economics. During the enactment of the anti-homosexuality law, the president said this was a war and he was ready for it. Mm-hmm. And he also said people must sacrifice. So on his side, what is he sacrificing? Can he cut down the cost of government? Mm-hmm. Can he cut down cabinet? since he said he's ready for the war? Can he table proposals to cut down the size of government? And if his caucus agrees, since they all said they were ready for war and they are ready for sacrifice, can we have half cabinet, half parliament, merge back the districts, the incompetent district units, we merge them back to where they came from, and remove RDCs because they have no business duty other than political patronage. The other issue we must do, if our economy must thrive, to pay tax today and tomorrow, the tax regime must create a gap for prosperity, for profitability, spur growth. If you tax business community out of business, you will have nobody tax tomorrow. We already have evidence of a shrinking economy. URA data shows that the biggest taxpayers, 5 billion to 100 billion, have gone out of business. 93% of the big taxpayers have closed shop. So who are they going to tax tomorrow with this reckless taxation?
Well, we have more comments coming in from a research perspective. New systems must be piloted, just like we have adaptive trials in agriculture, science research. First, test run the system and learn before rolling it out. That's a comment from Franco in Kawempe. And somebody else writes and says, thank you, Kenneth and the panelists. I sell a truck of bananas every 2 weeks and I pay no tax. I enjoy my kamane freely. That's a comment from somebody there who is very honest. Then we have Anthony writing in and saying, why do you always mention NRM in your speech? What do you have to offer to Uganda? I think that is Ochieno there.
We offered a lot.
Then somebody else writes in and says, increase the threshold of VAT to 500 million, then let the tax be productive. Roads without potholes, medicine in hospitals, and be accountable, not direct theft like for Lubowa Hospital. Well, those are some of the comments that are coming in. Honorable Minister, your quick responses as we come to the end of this show.
Thank you very much. I would like, first of all, to thank the listeners. I think they have given us very good feedback. First of all, I would like to tell my brother Ochieno that EFRIS is everywhere. It's not selective. So even in Mbarara, EFRIS is there. Whoever gave you that information is fake news. Yes. And I would like to say the system has been running since 2018. It's only that right now we are scaling it up. And when you are just scaling up something, you must get a lot of resistance. Because even when VAT was introduced in 1996, I think, there was a lot of resistance. But eventually people got used to it and it's now working well. Now, this system now, obviously we shall have a lot of challenges, just as I enumerated before. But I would like the population to be calm. I think since the business people met the president today, they must have come up with some short-term solutions. Obviously, they already met the ministers and they agreed on some few issues, though later on the traders said, no, this is not how we agreed, but at least they have already met. And we shall continue engaging from time to time till we get a win-win situation. But the system is one of the best if in terms of compliance and also in terms of, even for the business people.
Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. An extra hour of analysis and discussion of the topical issues of the week. Brought to you by Housing Finance Bank, a financial institution regulated by Bank of Uganda. Housing